You need to understand that Donovan comes first now. He's my future, and frankly, you're an adult who should be independent by now. My mother Vivian's words echoed through the hospital waiting room as I sat beside my father's bedside, watching the machines keep him alive after his third heart attack. My name is Seraphina. I'm 28 and until 6 months ago, I thought I had a loving family. I work as a digital marketing strategist for a boutique agency in Seattle, the kind of creative job that lets me build brands and tell stories that matter to people. Nothing that impresses my mother, who's always valued appearances over authenticity, but work that fulfills me and pays well enough to support myself and help my aging father when needed. Dad had been in intensive care for 2 weeks. The doctors said his recovery would require months of rehabilitation and round-the-clock care. Mom had been visiting for exactly 45 minutes each day, just long enough to update her social media with supportive wife photos before rushing back to her boyfriend Donovan's luxury condo. I can't put my life on hold indefinitely, she continued, checking her diamond-encrusted watch. Donovan has planned a wonderful weekend for us in Napa, and frankly, your father would want me to be happy. Dad was unconscious, tubes running from his mouth, monitors beeping steadily. He couldn't speak, couldn't defend himself, couldn't tell her exactly what he thought of her happiness. Mom, he's your husband of 32 years. He needs us right now. He needs medical care, which he's getting. What he doesn't need is me sitting here feeling depressed when I could be living my life. She stood up, smoothing her designer dress. Donovan and I are getting married in 3 months. You can choose to be supportive of my happiness, or you can choose to be bitter about the past. But I won't let anyone, including you, interfere with my future. Hey everyone watching from around the world, if you're enjoying this story of family betrayal and ultimate justice, hit that like button and subscribe for more daily stories where loyalty gets its revenge. Let me know in the comments what country you're watching from and if you've ever dealt with a parent who chose someone else over family. I watched her walk out of the ICU, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor, leaving me alone with my unconscious father and the devastating realization that my mother had already moved on from our family. That night, I sat in my apartment researching Donovan Kellerman, the man my mother was planning to marry. What I found made my blood run cold. Donovan was 58, recently divorced from his second wife, and according to public records, currently paying alimony to both of his ex-wives. His construction business had filed for bankruptcy protection twice in the past decade. His luxury condo was rented, not owned, and his flashy car was leased. But the most interesting discovery was his dating history. Using social media investigation techniques I'd learned in my marketing work, I traced his romantic timeline over the past 5 years. 7 different women, all between ages 45 to 60, all recently divorced or widowed, all with significant assets. Donovan had a type, vulnerable women with money who were desperate for companionship. The pattern was always the same. He'd meet them through upscale dating sites, sweep them off their feet with expensive dates and romantic gestures, move in quickly, and within a year, he'd either be engaged or they'd mysteriously break up after some financial crisis in his business required their temporary help. My mother wasn't his future wife. She was his next mark. I dug deeper into his business records. Kellerman Construction LLC had been operating at a loss for 3 years. He owed $240,000 to suppliers, $67,000 in back taxes, and had defaulted on 2 business loans totaling $180,000. But here's what made it personal: he'd been dating my mother for 8 months, and during that exact time period, she'd taken out a $75,000 home equity loan against the house she shared with my father. A house my father had worked 2 jobs to pay for over 30 years. When I confronted her about it 3 days later, she was defensive and evasive. Donovan is going through a temporary cash flow problem. Once his next big contract comes through, he'll pay everything back with interest. Mom, Dad is in the hospital fighting for his life, and you're giving his money to some guy you met online. It's my money too. I've been married to your father for 32 years. I have every right to use our assets as I see fit. Does Dad know about the loan? Her silence was answer enough. He signed the papers while he was on medication for his heart condition, didn't he? You had him sign financial documents while he was drugged and barely conscious. Your father trusts my judgment. Dad doesn't know you've been planning to leave him for months. Dad doesn't know you've been funding your boyfriend's failing business with his retirement money. She stood up abruptly. That's enough. You're clearly upset about your father's condition, and you're taking it out on me and Donovan. We're getting married in 10 weeks, and you can either be supportive or you can stay away. What about Dad? What about him? If he recovers, he'll need long-term care. If he doesn't. She shrugged. Either way, I can't spend the rest of my life being a caregiver. I deserve happiness. I stared at my mother, seeing her clearly for the first time. She'd already written off her husband of 3 decades because taking care of him would interfere with her new romance. That's when I decided that if she wanted to marry Donovan so badly, I'd make sure everyone understood exactly what kind of man she was choosing over her family. The wedding was planned for October 15th at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel in Seattle. 200 guests, including family members who'd known my parents for decades, business associates, and friends from their social circle who had no idea what had been happening behind the scenes. I RSVP'd that I'd be attending alone, since Dad was still in rehabilitation. Mom seemed relieved that I wasn't going to cause drama by bringing up his condition during her special day. What she didn't know was that I'd spent the previous 6 weeks conducting the most thorough background investigation of my career. Everything I'd learned about Donovan was carefully documented, verified, and organized into a presentation that would make any marketing executive proud. I also hired a private investigator named Marcus Webb, a former police detective who specialized in financial fraud cases. What Marcus discovered went far beyond what I'd found through public records. Donovan hadn't just been dating multiple women for financial gain, he'd been systematically defrauding them. His first wife had lost her entire inheritance to his business investments. His second wife had been left with $120,000 in debt after he'd used her credit to fund his construction company. The woman he'd dated before my mother had transferred $45,000 to help him with a temporary tax problem. When she'd started asking questions about repayment, he'd suddenly broken up with her, claiming she was too controlling and suspicious. Marcus had interviewed 3 of Donovan's ex-girlfriends. The stories were heartbreakingly similar, lonely women who'd thought they'd found love, only to discover they'd been systematically manipulated and financially exploited. But the most damning evidence was what Marcus found in Donovan's financial records. He'd been secretly recording phone conversations with my mother, documenting her asset information, and keeping detailed notes about my father's health condition and prognosis. In his own handwriting, we found a notebook with entries like, V thinks husband won't last 6 months, house worth $850,000, 401k around $340,000, life insurance $500,000. He wasn't marrying my mother because he loved her. He was marrying her because he'd calculated the exact value of becoming her widower. The wedding day arrived with perfect October weather. The Fairmont's grand ballroom was decorated with white roses and gold accents, everything elegant and expensive. Guests mingled during the cocktail hour, talking about what a lovely couple Mom and Donovan made, how happy they seemed, how nice it was to see Vivian moving forward after such a difficult time with her husband's health issues. I arrived wearing a classic black dress and a smile, carrying a small gift bag and what everyone assumed was a normal wedding card. During the cocktail hour, I made polite conversation with relatives I hadn't seen in months. Everyone asked about Dad's condition. I told them he was improving slowly, doing physical therapy, and hoping to come home soon. Some of them seemed surprised that Mom had decided to go ahead with the wedding while her husband was still in rehabilitation. Well, said my Aunt Catherine, your mother deserves happiness. She's been through so much stress with your father's illness. She certainly has, I agreed. Though it's interesting how people handle stress differently. Some people pull together during crisis, and others make different choices. The ceremony itself was beautiful, I had to admit. Mom looked radiant in her ivory silk gown, and Donovan was handsome in his custom tuxedo. They exchanged vows about love, commitment, and being there for each other through sickness and health. I thought about Dad, probably watching television in his rehabilitation center, completely unaware that his wife was promising to love another man while he fought to regain the strength to walk again. After the ceremony, guests moved to the reception. The ballroom was arranged with round tables for 10, a dance floor in the center, and a head table where the happy couple would sit with immediate family. I was seated at table 7 with cousins and family friends, strategically positioned where I could see the head table but wasn't close enough for anyone to stop me once I started talking. Dinner was served first, salmon with risotto, quite good actually. The conversations were light, celebratory, everyone commenting on how beautiful the wedding was, how happy Mom seemed, what a gentleman Donovan appeared to be. Then came the toasts. The best man, Donovan's brother Patrick, spoke first. He talked about how Donovan had finally found the love he deserved and how Vivian was exactly what he needed to start this new chapter of his life. The maid of honor, Mom's sister Janet, spoke about how Mom had been through such difficult times but had found the courage to choose happiness. Then the microphone was passed around for anyone who wanted to offer congratulations or share memories. Several people spoke. Colleagues from Mom's real estate office. Friends from their country club. Donovan's business associates, talking about what a successful entrepreneur he was. Finally, the microphone reached my table. I'd like to say something about my mother and her new husband, I announced, standing up. The room went quiet, everyone turning to look at me. Mom smiled nervously from the head table. Donovan raised his champagne glass in my direction. Thank you, sweetheart, Mom called out. We're so glad you're here to celebrate with us. I walked toward the center of the dance floor, holding the microphone, making sure my voice would carry clearly to every corner of the room. My mother taught me many valuable lessons growing up, I began. She taught me about loyalty, about commitment, about the importance of family. She taught me that when someone you love is going through a difficult time, you don't abandon them, you stand by them. Nods around the room. People were smiling, expecting a sweet daughter's tribute to her mother's values. She also taught me about honesty. About telling the truth even when it's uncomfortable. About making sure people understand exactly what they're getting into before they make important decisions. Mom's smile was becoming strained. Donovan looked confused but was still trying to appear gracious. So in the spirit of honesty and family loyalty, I think there are some things everyone should know about this beautiful celebration. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the room's sound system, something I'd arranged with the AV technician earlier by telling him I was planning a surprise slideshow for the happy couple. First, I want everyone to understand the timeline of this romance. My mother and Donovan began their relationship 8 months ago. That was exactly 2 weeks after my father's first heart attack. Murmurs around the room. People were starting to look uncomfortable. While my father was in cardiac intensive care, my mother was on dating websites meeting new men. While he was learning to walk again during his first rehabilitation, she was falling in love with someone else. Seraphina, that's enough, Mom called out, starting to stand up. Oh, I'm just getting started, Mom. Please, sit down. I think your guests deserve to hear the complete story of your great love affair. The slideshow began on the large screens positioned around the ballroom. The first image was a photo of my father in his hospital bed, unconscious, with medical equipment surrounding him. This is my father 3 weeks ago. He's been in and out of the hospital for 6 months. He's currently in a long-term care facility learning to walk again after his 3rd heart attack. The next slide showed the home equity loan documents. While my father was fighting for his life, my mother took out a $75,000 loan against their house, the house my father worked 2 jobs to pay for over 30 years, to give money to her new boyfriend. Gasps around the room. Donovan's face went pale. She had my father sign these documents while he was heavily medicated and barely conscious. He still doesn't know that his retirement savings are being used to fund his wife's new relationship. The slideshow continued with Donovan's business records, bankruptcy filings, and debt documents. Now let me tell you about the man my mother chose over her husband of 32 years. Donovan Kellerman has been married twice before. Both marriages ended when his wives discovered he'd been using their money to fund his failing business ventures. Security was starting to move toward me, but I continued speaking quickly. Donovan currently owes $487,000 to various creditors. His business has been operating at a loss for 3 years. His luxury lifestyle is funded entirely by borrowing money from women he meets online. The next slide showed photos and quotes from his previous girlfriends, their faces blurred for privacy but their stories clearly detailed. In the past 5 years, Donovan has systematically defrauded 7 different women out of a combined total of $340,000. His method is always the same: he targets recently divorced or widowed women with assets, moves quickly to establish emotional dependence, then creates financial emergencies that require their help. Mom was crying now, mascara running down her face. Donovan was trying to get the microphone away from me, but hotel security was blocking his path. The most interesting part of this investigation was discovering Donovan's notebook, where he'd been tracking my mother's financial assets and making predictions about how long my father would live. I held up photocopies of the notebook pages. Quote, husband unlikely to survive another major cardiac event, house worth $850,000, retirement accounts approximately $340,000, life insurance $500,000. End quote. The room erupted. People were shouting, some were standing up to leave, others were taking photos with their phones. The elegant wedding reception had become complete chaos. My mother had a choice, I said, my voice carrying over the noise. She could have chosen to honor her 32-year marriage by caring for her sick husband. Instead, she chose to abandon him for a con artist who viewed her as his next financial target. I handed the microphone back to the shocked wedding coordinator and walked toward the exit, but not before leaving my wedding gift on the head table, a folder containing every document Marcus had uncovered, including contact information for Donovan's previous victims and the detective handling the fraud investigation. Congratulations on your marriage, Mom, I said loud enough for everyone to hear. I hope you got exactly what you were looking for. The aftermath was swift and brutal. By the next morning, the story was all over social media. Several wedding guests had recorded my speech and posted it online with captions like "Daughter exposes mother's affair and groom's criminal history at wedding." The local news picked up the story by Tuesday. Wedding reception becomes crime expose ran as the lead story on the evening news, complete with interviews from Donovan's previous victims who came forward after seeing the coverage. Wednesday brought the first lawsuit. Donovan's second ex-wife filed criminal charges for fraud and identity theft related to credit cards he'd opened in her name. Thursday, the IRS placed liens on all of Donovan's assets for unpaid taxes dating back 4 years. Friday, Mom called me for the first time since the wedding. "You've destroyed my life," she said, her voice hoarse from crying. "Everything is ruined. The marriage, my reputation, my career." "I didn't destroy anything, Mom. I just told the truth about choices you made." Donovan isn't speaking to me. He's saying I knew about his financial problems and that I'm part of some conspiracy to destroy him. Are you surprised? When criminals get caught, they always blame someone else. I loved him. You loved the idea of him. You loved feeling young and desired again. You loved having someone tell you that you deserved better than taking care of a sick husband. She was quiet for a long moment. What about your father? Does he know? I told him everything yesterday. About the boyfriend, the money, the wedding, all of it. How did he react? I thought about Dad's face when I'd explained what had happened. The hurt, the betrayal, but also something like relief that he finally understood why his wife had been so distant during his recovery. He asked me to file for divorce on his behalf. He doesn't want to be married to someone who would abandon him when he needed her most. The house, the accounts, everything is in both our names. He can't just. Actually, he can. Fraud invalidates financial agreements. When you had him sign that home equity loan while he was medicated and didn't tell him you were planning to leave him, you committed elder abuse. Dad's attorney is very interested in pursuing criminal charges. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You stole Dad's retirement money to fund your boyfriend's criminal enterprise. You abandoned your husband while he was fighting for his life. You chose a con artist over your family. I made mistakes, but I don't deserve this. You made choices, Mom. And choices have consequences. The divorce proceedings moved quickly. Mom couldn't afford to contest it once the criminal investigation began. She ended up with nothing except the debt she'd accumulated helping Donovan. Donovan himself was arrested 6 weeks after the wedding on multiple fraud charges. The publicity from the wedding video had brought forward 12 additional victims from different states. He was ultimately sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Mom lost her real estate license due to the criminal investigation. She had to move in with her sister and take a job as a receptionist at a dental office. Dad made a full recovery. The stress of the divorce seemed to motivate him to get stronger, and within 6 months he was back to his old self. He sold the house and moved into a comfortable retirement community where he's made new friends and started dating a lovely widow named Margaret who actually enjoys taking care of people. The wedding video went viral, eventually reaching over 2 million views. I started getting messages from people sharing similar stories about parents who'd abandoned their families for new relationships, and from adult children who'd discovered their parents were being financially exploited by romantic partners. The response gave me an idea for a new business venture. I launched a consulting service called Family Protection Strategies, specializing in background investigations for families concerned about their relatives' new romantic partners. My first clients were adult children worried about elderly parents being targeted by romance scammers. The business grew rapidly. Apparently, there's a huge need for professional investigation services when family members suspect their loved ones are being manipulated or exploited. Within a year, I'd expanded to 3 full-time investigators and was handling cases across the Pacific Northwest. My specialty became exposing romance scams targeting widowed and divorced women over 50. We prevented an estimated $2.8 million in fraud losses by exposing con artists before they could complete their schemes. My most satisfying case involved a 72-year-old woman whose children were concerned about her new boyfriend who'd convinced her to take out a reverse mortgage to fund his investment opportunities. Our investigation revealed he'd been married to 4 different women simultaneously and had stolen over $600,000 from various victims. When we presented our evidence to the family, the woman was initially angry with her children for interfering in her happiness. But after seeing the documented proof of his criminal history, she realized how close she'd come to losing everything. I thought he loved me, she told me afterwards. I thought someone finally saw value in me again. You do have value, I told her. That's exactly why he targeted you. These predators look for wonderful people who deserve better than they've been getting. The business became successful enough that I was invited to speak at conferences about elder financial abuse and romance scams. My most popular presentation was titled "When Love is a Lie, Protecting Your Family from Romance Fraud." I always started with the same opening line: sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones who put us in danger. Sometimes the people we're supposed to trust are the ones we most need protection from. Then I'd tell my mother's story. Not to humiliate her, but to help other families recognize the warning signs before it was too late. Mom and I don't speak anymore. She sends a Christmas card each year with a generic message, but we haven't had a real conversation since the divorce was finalized. I occasionally hear updates through relatives. She's still working as a receptionist, still living with her sister, still bitter about how her life turned out. She tells people I ruined her chance at happiness, that I was jealous of her relationship with Donovan. I don't think she's ever taken responsibility for the choices she made. Dad remarried Margaret last spring. Their wedding was small and elegant, held in the garden of his retirement community. Margaret's children and grandchildren were there, along with Dad's friends and some of our extended family. During his speech, Dad talked about finding love again after loss, about the difference between selfish love and selfless love, and about how the right person makes you want to be better, not abandon your responsibilities. Some people, he said, looking directly at me, think love means choosing someone over everyone else. But real love means choosing someone who makes you more capable of loving everyone else. Margaret squeezed his hand and smiled. Her first husband had died of cancer 5 years ago, and she'd spent 2 years caring for him at home. She understood about commitment and sacrifice and staying with someone through sickness and health. After the ceremony, Dad pulled me aside. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For protecting me when I couldn't protect myself. For telling the truth when it would have been easier to stay quiet. For showing me what real loyalty looks like." I hugged him tight, this man who'd worked 2 jobs to provide for his family, who'd stayed faithful to his marriage vows even when his wife hadn't, who'd taught me that love is measured in actions, not words. They exchanged vows about love, commitment, and being there for each other through sickness and health. I thought about Dad, probably watching television in his rehabilitation center, completely unaware that his wife was promising to love another man while he fought to regain the. "You would have done the same for me," I said. "I hope so. I hope I raised you to understand that family means showing up when it matters most." Looking back, I don't regret exposing my mother and Donovan at their wedding. Some people might say I should have handled it privately, that public humiliation was cruel. But here's the thing, my mother was about to legally bind herself to a criminal who was planning to steal her money and possibly harm her once my father died. The public exposure didn't just save her from Donovan, it helped law enforcement build a case that protected his future victims. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is prevent them from making a catastrophic mistake, even if they hate you for it. My mother chose a con artist over her family. I chose my family over social politeness. I'm comfortable with my choice. And based on the success of my business helping other families avoid similar situations, I'm not the only person who thinks protecting loved ones is more important than protecting feelings. Sometimes the truth hurts. But lies hurt more, and they hurt for longer. My mother learned that the hard way. I just made sure she learned it before it was too late to recover from the damage.